Oh, I don't know what I'm doing with my hair. Look at this. It's mane. Maybe I should have just left it up. This is Monday. Ace is back. It's fantastic. Super happy about it. It sounded sarcastic, but it's the truth. And we are reading Brothers Grimm fairy tales today. Okay, does this look any better? Looks slightly better. And also, who cares? I've got my fan on because it's hot. Sure, whatever. Got my fan on because it's hot. This is the book that we're reading out of today. So we'll just get a few done because it's lunchtime. Where are you going, buddy? He's coming over to say hi, I guess. So let's just plan out the ones that we will be reading. Cool. We are starting with The Brother and Sister. So once again, these are just Brothers Grimm fairy tales. The brother took his sister's hand and said to her, "Since our mother died, we have had no good days. Our stepmother beats us every day, and if we go near her, she kicks us away. We have nothing to eat but hard crusts of bread left over. The dog under the table fares better. He gets a good piece every now and then. If our mother only knew how she would pity us. Come, let us go together out into the wide world." So they went and journeyed the whole day through fields and meadows and stony places, and if it rained, the sister said, "The skies and we are weeping together." In the evening they came to a great wood, and they were so weary with hunger and their long journey that they climbed up into a high tree and fell asleep. The next morning, when they awoke, the sun was high in heaven and shone brightly through the leaves. Then said the brother, "Sister, I am thirsty. If I only knew where to find a brook that I might go and drink. I almost think that I hear one rushing." So the brother got down and led his sister by the hand, and they went to seek the brook. But their wicked stepmother was a witch, and had known quite well that the two children had run away, and sneaked after them, as only witches can, and had laid a spell on all the brooks in the forest. So when they found a little stream flowing smoothly over its pebbles, the brother was going to drink of it, but the sister heard how it said in its rushing, "He a tiger will be whom drinks of me, who drinks of me a tiger will be." Then the sister cried, "Pray, dear brother, do not drink, or you will become a wild beast and tear me in pieces." So the brother refrained from drinking, though his thirst was great, and he said he would wait till he came to the next brook. When they came to the second brook, the sister heard it say, He a wolf will be who drinks of me, who drinks of me a wolf will be." Then the sister cried, "Pray, dear brother, do not drink, or you will be turned into a wolf and will eat me up." So the brother refrained from drinking and said, "I will wait until we come to the next brook, and then I must drink whatever you say, my thirst is so great." And when they came to the third brook, the sister heard how in its rushing it said, "He who drinks of me a fawn will be, he a fawn will be who drinks of me." Then the sister said, "Oh, my brother, I pray drink not, or you will be turned into a fawn and run away far from me." But he had already kneeled by the side of the brook and stopped and drunk of the water, and as the first drops passed his lips, he became a fawn. And the sister wept over her poor lost brother, and the fawn wept also and stayed sadly beside her. At last the maiden said, "Be comforted, dear fawn, indeed I will never leave you." Then she untied her golden girdle and bound it round the fawn's neck, and went and gathered rushes to make a soft cord, which she fastened to him, and then she led him on, and they went deeper into the forest. And when they had gone a long way, they came at last to a little house, and the maiden looked inside, and it was empty, and as it was empty, she thought, "We might as well live here." And she fetched leaves and moss to make a soft bed for the fawn, and every morning she went out and gathered roots and berries and nuts for herself, and fresh grass for the fawn, who ate out of her hand with joy, frolicking round her. At night, when the sister was tired and had said her prayers, she laid her head on the fawn's back, which served her for a pillow, and softly fell asleep. And if only the brother could have got back his own shape again, it would have been a charming life. So they lived a long while in the wilderness alone. Now it happened that the king of that country held a great hunt in the forest. The blowing of the horns, the barking of the dogs, and the lusty shouts of the huntsmen sounded through the wood, and the fawn heard them and was eager to be among them. "Oh," said he to his sister, "do let me go to the hunt. I cannot stay behind any longer." And begged so long that at last she consented. "But mind," said she to him, "come back to me at night. I must lock my door against the wild hunters, so, in order that I may know you, you must knock and say, 'Little sister, let me in,' and unless I hear that, I shall not unlock the door." Then the fawn sprang out and felt glad and merry in the open air. The king and his huntsmen saw the beautiful animal and began at once to pursue him, but they could not come within reach of him, for when they thought they were certain of him, he sprang away over the bushes and disappeared. As soon as it was dark, he went back to the little house, knocked at the door, and said, "Little sister, let me in." Then the door was opened to him, and he went in and rested the whole night long on a soft bed. The next morning the hunt began anew, and when the fawn heard the hunting horns and the tally-ho of the huntsmen, he could rest no longer, and said, "Little sister, let me out, I must go." The sister opened the door and said, "Now, mind you must come back at night and say the same words." When the king and his hunters saw the fawn with the golden collar again, they chased him closely, but he was too nimble and swift for them. This lasted the whole day, and at last the hunters surrounded him, and one of them wounded his foot a little, so that he was obliged to limp and to go slowly. Then a hunter slipped after him to the little house, and heard how he called out, "Little sister, let me in," and saw the door open and shut again after him directly. The hunter noticed all this carefully, and went to the king and told him all that he had seen and heard. Then said the king, "Tomorrow we will hunt again." But the sister was very terrified when she saw that her fawn was wounded. She washed his foot, laid cooling leaves round it, and said, "Lie down on your bed, dear fawn, and rest, that you may be well soon." The wound was very slight, so that the fawn felt nothing of it the next morning. And when he heard the noise of the hunting outside, he said, "I cannot stay in, I must go after them. I shall not be taken easily again." The sister began to weep and said, "I know you will be killed, and I left you alone here in the forest, and I know you will be killed, and I left alone here in the forest, and forsaken of everybody. I cannot let you go." "Then I shall die here with longing," answered the fawn. "When I hear the sound of the horn, I feel as if I should leap out of my skin." Then the sister, seeing there was no help for it, unlocked the door with a heavy heart, and the fawn bounded away into the forest, well and merry. When the king saw him, he said to his hunters, "Now follow him all day long till the night comes, and see that you do him no harm." As soon as the sun went down, the king said to the huntsman, "Now come and show me the little house in the wood." And when he got to the door, he knocked at it and said, "Little sister, let me in." Then the door opened, and the king went in, and there stood a maiden more beautiful than any he had seen before. The maiden shrieked out when she saw, instead of the fawn, a man standing there with a gold crown on his head. But the king looked kindly on her, took her by the hand, and said, "Will you go with me to my castle and be my dear wife?" "Oh, yes," answered the maiden, "but the fawn must come too. I could not leave him." And the king said, "He shall remain with you as long as you live, and shall lack of nothing." Then the fawn came bounding in, and the sister tied the cord of rushes to him, and led him by her own hand out of the little house. The king put the beautiful maiden on his horse, and carried her to his castle, where the wedding was held with great pomp. So she became lady queen, and they lived happily together for a long while. The fawn was well tended and cherished, and he gamboled about the castle garden. Now the wicked stepmother, whose fault it was that the children were driven out into the wood, never dreamed that the sister had been eaten up by wild beasts in the forest, and that the brother, in the likeness of a fawn, had been slain by the hunters. I'm just going to adjust this. Had been slain by the hunters. But when she heard that they were so happy and that things had gone so well with them, jealousy and envy arose in her heart and left her no peace, and her chief thought was how to bring misfortune upon them. Her own daughter, who was as ugly as sin and had only one eye, complained to her and said, "I never had the chance of being queen." "Never mind," said the old woman to satisfy her. "When the time comes, I shall be at hand." After a while, the queen brought a beautiful baby boy into the world, and that day the king was out hunting. The old witch took the shape of a bedchamber woman and went into the room where the queen lay, and said to her, "Come, this bath is ready. I will give you refreshment and new strength. Quick, or it will be cold." Her daughter was within call, so they carried the sick queen into the bathroom and left her there. And in the bathroom they made a great fire so as to suffocate the beautiful young queen. When that was managed, the old woman took her daughter, put a cap on her, and laid her in the bed in the queen's place, also gave her the queen's form and countenance, only she could not restore the lost eye. So, in order that the king might not remark it, she had to lie on the side where there was no eye. In the evening, when the king came home and heard that a little son was born to him, he rejoiced with all his heart and was going at once to his dear wife's bedside to see how she did. Then the old woman cried hastily, "For your life, do not draw back the curtain to let in light upon her. She must be kept quiet." So the king went away and never knew what a false queen was lying in his bed. Now, when it was midnight and everyone was asleep, the nurse, who was sitting by the cradle in the nursery and watching there alone, saw the door open, and the true queen came in. She took the child out of the cradle, laid it in her bosom, and fed it. Then she shook out its little pillow, put the child back again, and covered it with a coverlet. She did not forget the fawn either. She went to him where he lay in the corner and stroked his back tenderly. Then she went in perfect silence out the door, and the nurse next morning asked the watchmen if anyone had entered the castle during the night, but they said they had seen no one. And the queen came many nights and never said a word. The nurse saw her always, but she did not dare speak of it to anyone. After some time had gone by in this manner, the queen seemed to find voice, and said one night, "My child, my fawn, twice more I come to see, twice more I come, and then the end it must be." The nurse said nothing, but as soon as the queen had disappeared, she went to the king and told him all. The king said, "Oh heaven, what do I hear? I will myself watch by the child tomorrow night." So at evening he went into the nursery, and at midnight the queen appeared and said, "My child, my fawn, once more I come to see, once more I come, and then the end must be." And she tended the child, as she was accustomed to do, before she vanished. The king dared not speak to her, but he watched again the following night, and heard her say, "My child, my fawn, this once I come to see, this once I come, and now the end must be." Then the king could contain himself no longer, but rushed towards her, saying, "You are no other than my dear wife." Then she answered, "Yes, I am your dear wife." And in that moment, by the grace of heaven, her life returned to her, and she was once more well and strong. Then she told the king the snare that the wicked witch and her daughter had laid for her. The king had them both brought to judgment, and sentence was passed upon them. The daughter was sent away into the wood, where she was devoured by the wild beasts, and the witch was burned and ended miserably. And as soon as her body was in ashes, the spell was removed from the fawn, and he took human shape again. And then the sister and brother lived happily together until the end. There's that one. My lip trap is on the floor, and it's over there, and I need it. So I'm going to go get it. Oh, almost fell completely over. Okay. My voice is a little rough. It was a busy weekend. It's a lot of talking. And my hair. Yesterday was hair wash day. And I've straightened it a little bit for the past 2 hair washes, and I'm not going to for a little bit, so it's just going to continue to look like this. Next story is Rapunzel. There's a little drawing with it today. Okay, we all know this one, but let's do it anyway. Rapunzel. There once lived a man and his wife who had long wished for a child, but in vain. Now there was at the back of their house a little window which overlooked a beautiful garden full of the finest vegetables and flowers. But there was a high wall all round it, and no one ventured into it, for it belonged to a witch of great might, and of whom all the world was afraid. One day that the wife was standing at the window and looking into the garden, she saw a bed filled with the finest rampion, and it looked so fresh and green that she began to wish for some, and at length she longed for it greatly. This went on for days, and as she knew she could not get the rampion, she pined away and grew pale and miserable. Then the man was uneasy and asked, "What is the matter, dear wife?" "Oh," answered she, "I shall die unless I can have some of that rampion to eat that grows in the garden at the back of our house." The man, who loved her very much, thought to himself, "Rather than lose my wife, I will get some rampion, cost what it will." So in the twilight he climbed over the wall into the witch's garden, plucked hastily a handful of rampion, and brought it to his wife. She made a salad of it at once, and ate of it to her heart's content. But she liked it so much, and it tasted so good, that the next day she longed for it thrice as much as she had done before, and if she was to have any rest, the man must climb over the wall once more. So he went into the twilight again, and as he was climbing back, he saw all at once the witch standing before him, and was terribly frightened as she cried with angry eyes, "How dare you climb over into my garden wall like a thief and steal my rampion? It shall be worse for you." "Oh," answered he, "be merciful rather than just. I have only done it through necessity, for my wife saw your rampion out of the window and became possessed with so great a longing that she would have died if she could not have had some to eat." Then the witch said, "If it is all as you say, you may have as much rampion as you like, on one condition. The child that will come into the world must be given to me. It shall go well with the child, and I will take care for it like a mother." In his distress of mind, the man promised everything, and when the time came when the child was born, the witch appeared, and, giving the child the name of Rapunzel, which is the same as rampion, she took it away with her. Rapunzel was the most beautiful child in the world. When she was 12 years old, the witch shut her up in a tower in the midst of a wood, and it had neither steps nor door, only a small window above. When the witch wished to be let in, she would stand below and cry, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel had beautiful long hair that shone like gold. When she heard the voice of the witch, she would undo the fastening of the upper window, unbind the plaits of her hair, and let it down 20 ells below, and the witch would climb up by it. After they had lived thus a few years, it happened that as the king's son was riding through the wood, he came to the tower, and as he drew near, he heard a voice singing so sweetly that he stood still and listened. It was Rapunzel in her loneliness, trying to pass away the time with sweet songs. The king's son wished to go into her, and sought to find a door in the tower, but there was none. So he rode home, but the song had entered into his heart, and every day he went into the wood and listened to it. Once, as he was standing there under a tree, he saw the witch come up, and listened while she called out, "Oh, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Then he saw how Rapunzel let down her long tresses, and how the witch climbed up by it and went into her, and he said to himself, "Since that is the ladder, I will climb it and seek my fortune." And the next day, as soon as it began to grow dusk, he went to the tower and cried, "Oh, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And she let down her hair, and the king's son climbed up by it. Rapunzel was greatly terrified when she saw that a man had come into her, for she had never seen one before. But the king's son began speaking so kindly to her, and told her how her singing had entered into his heart, so that he could have no peace until he had seen her herself. Then Rapunzel forgot her terror, and when he asked her to take him for her husband, and she saw that he was young and beautiful, she thought to herself, "I certainly like him much better than old Mother Gothel." And she put her hand into his hand, saying, "I would willingly go with thee, but I do not know how I shall get out. When thou comest, bring each time a silken rope, and I will make a ladder, and when it is quite ready, I will go down by it out of the tower, and thou shalt take me away on thy horse." They agreed that he should come to her every evening as the old woman came in the daytime. So the witch knew nothing of all this until once Rapunzel said to her unwittingly, "Mother Gothel, how is it that you climb up here so slowly, and the king's son is with me in a moment?" "O wicked child," cried the witch, "what is this I hear? I thought I had hidden thee from all the world, and thou hast betrayed me." In her anger, she seized Rapunzel by her beautiful hair, struck her several times with her left hand, and then grasping a pair of shears in her right, snip, snap, the beautiful locks lay on the ground. And she was so hard-hearted that she took Rapunzel and put her in a waste and desert place, where she lived in a great woe and misery. The same day on which she took Rapunzel away, she went back to the tower in the evening and made fast the severed locks of hair to the window hasp. And the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Then she let the hair down, and the king's son climbed up, but instead of his dearest Rapunzel, he found the witch looking at him with wicked glittering eyes. "Aha!" cried she, mocking him. "You came for your darling, but the sweet bird sits no longer in the nest and sings no more. The cat has got her, and will scratch out your eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to you, and you will see her no more." The king's son was beside himself with grief, and in his agony he sprang from the tower. He escaped with life, but the thorns on which he fell put out his eyes. Then he wandered blind through the wood, eating nothing but roots and berries, and doing nothing but lament and weep for the poor loss of his dearest wife. So he wandered several years in misery until at last he came to the desert place where Rapunzel lived with her twin children that she had borne, a boy and a girl. At first he heard a voice that he thought he knew, and when he reached the place from which it seemed to come, Rapunzel knew him, and fell on his neck and wept. And when her tears touched his eyes, they became clear again, and he could see with them as well as ever. Then he took her to his kingdom, where he was received with great joy, and they lived long and happily. Yeah, that's the story of Rapunzel. Next is one called The Three Little Men in the Wood. There was once a man whose wife was dead, and a woman whose husband was dead, and the man had a daughter, and so had the woman. The girls were acquainted with each other and used to play together, sometimes in the woman's house. So the woman said to the man's daughter, "Listen to me. Tell your father that I will marry him, and then you shall have milk to wash in every morning and milk to wash in. Listen to me. Tell your father that I will marry him, and then you shall have milk to wash in every morning and wine to drink, and my daughter shall have water to wash in and water to drink." The girl went home and told her father what the woman had said. The man said, "What shall I do? Marriage is a joy and also a torment." Marriage is a joy and also a torment. I really stuttered there. At last, as he could come to no conclusion, he took off his boot and said to his daughter, "Take this boot. It has a hole in the sole. Go up with it into the loft, hang it on the big nail, and pour water in it. If it holds water, I will once more take to me a wife. If it lets the water out, so I will not." Yeah, really. The girl did as she was told, but the water held the hole together, and the boot was full up to the top. So she went and told her father how it was. And he went up to see with his own eyes, and as there was no mistake about it, he went to the widow and courted her. And then they had the wedding. The next morning, when the two girls awoke, there stood by the bedside of the man's daughter milk to wash in and wine to drink, and by the bedside of the woman's daughter there stood water to wash in and water to drink. On the second morning there stood water to wash in and water to drink for both of them alike. On the third morning there stood water to wash in and water to drink in for the man's daughter, and milk to wash in and wine to drink for the woman's daughter, and so it remained ever after. The woman hated her stepdaughter, and never knew how to treat her badly enough from one day to another. And she was jealous because her stepdaughter was pleasant and pretty, and her real daughter was ugly and hateful. Once in winter, when it was freezing hard, and snow lay deep on hill and valley, the woman made a frock out of paper, called her stepdaughter, and said, "Here, put on this frock, go out into the wood and fetch me a basket of strawberries. I have a great wish for some." "Oh dear," said the girl, "there are no strawberries to be found in winter. The ground is frozen and the snow covers everything. And why should I go out in a paper frock? It is so cold out of doors that one's breath is frozen. The wind will blow through it and the thorns will tear it off my back." "How dare you contradict me?" cried the stepmother. "Be off, and don't let me see you again till you bring me a basket of strawberries." Then she gave her a little piece of hard bread and said, "That will do for you to eat during the day." And she thought to herself, "She is sure to be frozen or starved to death out of doors, and I shall never set eyes on her again." So the girl went obediently, put on the paper frock, and started out with the basket. The snow was lying everywhere, far and wide, and there was not a blade of green to be seen. When she entered the wood, she saw a little house with 3 little men peeping out of it. She wished them good day and knocked modestly at the door. They called her in, and she came into the room and sat down by the side of the oven to warm herself and eat her breakfast. The little men said, "Give us some of it." "Willingly," answered she, breaking little pieces of her bread off and giving them, breaking her little piece of bread in half and giving them half. Breaking her little piece of bread in two and giving them half. Got there. Then they said, "What are you doing out here in the wood in this winter time in your thin little frock?" "Oh," answered she, "I have to get a basket of strawberries, and I must not go home without them." When she had eaten her bread, they gave her a broom and told her to go and sweep the snow away from the back door. When she had gone outside to do it, the little men talked among themselves about what they should do for her, as she was so good and pretty, and had shared her bread with them. Then the first one said, "She shall grow prettier every day." The second said, "Each time she speaks, a piece of gold shall fall from her mouth." The third said, "A king shall come and take her for his wife." In the meantime, the girl was doing as the little men had told her, and had cleared the snow from the back of the little house. And what do you suppose she found? Fine ripe strawberries, showing dark red against the snow. Then she joyfully filled her little basket full, thanked the little men, shook hands with them all, and ran home in haste to bring her stepmother the thing she longed for. And as she went in, she said, "Good evening." A piece of gold fell from her mouth at once. Then she related all that had happened to her in the wood, and at each word that she spoke, gold pieces fell out of her mouth, so that soon they were scattered all over the room. "Just look at her pride and conceit," cried the stepmother, "throwing money about in this way." But in her heart she was jealous because of it, and wanted to go too into the wood to fetch strawberries. But the mother said, "No, my dear little girl, it is too cold, and you will be frozen to death." The stepsister, said the pride and conceit. I may have said stepmother. But she left her no peace, so at last the mother gave in, and got a splendid fur coat to put on, and gave her bread and butter and cakes to eat on the way. The girl went into the wood and walked straight up to the little house. The three little men peeped out again, but she gave them no greeting, and without looking round or taking any notice of them, she came stumping into the room, sat herself down by the oven, and began to eat her bread and butter and cakes. "Give us some of that," cried the little men. But she answered, "I've not got enough for myself. How can I give any away?" Now when she had done with her eating, they said, "Here's a broom. Go sweep and clean all by the back door." "Oh, go and do it yourselves," answered she. "I am not your housemaid." But when she saw that they were not going to give her anything, she went out the door. Then the three little men said amongst themselves, "What shall we do to her, because she is so unpleasant, and has such a wicked, jealous heart, grudging everybody and everything?" The first said, "She shall grow uglier every day." The second said, "Each time she speaks, a toad shall jump out of her mouth at every word." The third said, "She shall die a miserable death." That's quite a thing, because she didn't give you bread. The girl was looking outside for strawberries, but as she found none, she went sulkingly home. And directly she opened her mouth to tell her mother what had happened to her in the wood, and a toad sprang out of her mouth at each word, so that everyone who came near her was quite disgusted. The stepmother became more and more set against the man's daughter, whose beauty increased day by day, but her only thought was how to do her some injury. So at last she took a kettle, set it on fire, and scalded some yarn in it. When it was ready, she hung it over the poor girl's shoulder, gave her an axe, and said she was to go into the frozen river and break a hole in the ice, and there rinse the yarn. She obeyed and went and hewed a hole in the ice, and as she was about it, there came by a splendid coach in which the king sat. The coach stood still, and the king said, "My child, who art thou, and what art thou doing here?" She answered, "I am a poor girl, and am rinsing yarn." Then the king felt pity for her, and as he saw she was very pretty and beautiful, he said, "Will you go with me?" "Oh, yes, with all my heart," answered she, and she felt very glad to be out of the way of her mother and sister. So she stepped into the coach and went off with the king, and when they reached his castle, the wedding was celebrated with great splendor, as the little men had foretold. I need a better chair. At the end of the year, the young queen had a son, and as the stepmother had heard of her great good fortune, she came with her daughter to the castle, as if merely to pay the king and queen a visit. One day, when the king had gone out, and when nobody was about, the bad woman took the queen by the head, and her daughter took her by her heels and dragged her out of bed, and threw her out of the window into a stream that flowed beneath it. Then the old woman put her ugly daughter in the bed, and covered her up to the chin. When the king came back and wanted to talk to his wife a little, the old woman cried, "Stop, stop! She is sleeping nicely. She must be kept quiet today." The king dreamt of nothing wrong, and came again the next morning, and as he spoke to his wife, and she answered him, there jumped each time out of her mouth a toad instead of the piece of gold as heretofore. Then he asked why that should be, and the old woman said it was because of her great weakness, and that it would pass away. But in the night, the boy who slept in the kitchen saw how something in the likeness of a duck swam up the gutter, and said, "My king, what makest thou? Sleepest thou, or wakest thou?" But there was no answer. Then it said, "What cheer my two guests keep they?" So the kitchen boy answered, "In bed all soundly sleep they." It asked again, "And my little baby, how does he?" And he answered, "He sleeps in his cradle quietly." Then the duck took the shape of the queen and went to the child, and gave him to drink, smoothed his little bed, covered him up again, and then, in the likeness of a duck, swam back down the gutter. In this way she came 2 nights, and on the 3rd she said to the kitchen boy, "Go and tell the king to brandish his sword 3 times over me on the threshold." Then the kitchen boy ran and told the king, and he came with his sword and brandished it 3 times over the duck. And at the 3rd time his wife stood before him living and hearty and sound as she had been before. The king was greatly rejoiced, but he hid the queen in a chamber until the Sunday came when the child was to be baptized. And after the baptism he said, "What does the person deserve who drags another out of bed and throws him in the water?" And the old woman answered, "No better than to be put into a cask with iron nails in it, and be rolled in it down the hill into the water." Then said the king, "You have spoken your own sentence." And he ordered a cask to be fetched, and the old woman and her daughter were put into it, and the top hammered down, and the cask was rolled down the hill into the river. Yikes. Hello. I think we have time for one more. This is called The 3 Spinsters. There was once a girl who was lazy and would not spin, and her mother could not persuade her to do what she would. At last the mother became angry and out of patience gave her a good beating, so that she cried out loudly. At that moment the queen was going by. As she heard the crying, she stopped, and, going into the house, she asked the mother why she was beating her daughter, so that everyone outside in the street could hear her cries. The woman was ashamed to tell of her daughter's laziness, so she said, "I cannot stop her from spinning. She is forever at it, and I am poor and cannot furnish her with flax enough." Then the queen answered, "I like nothing better than the sound of the spinning wheel, and always feel happy when I hear its humming. Let me take your daughter with me to the castle. I have plenty of flax. She shall spin there to her heart's content." The mother was only too glad of the offer, and the queen took the girl with her. When they reached the castle, the queen showed her 3 rooms which were filled with the finest flax, as full as they could hold. "Now you can spin me this flax," said she, "and when you can show me it is all done, you shall have my eldest son for bridegroom. You may be poor, but I make nothing of that. Your industry is dowry enough." The girl was inwardly terrified, for she could not have spun the flax, even if she were to live to be 100 years old, and were to sit spinning every day of her life from morning to evening. And when she found herself alone, she began to weep, and sat so for 3 days without putting her hand to it. On the 3rd day, the queen came, and when she saw that nothing had been done of the spinning, she was much surprised. But the girl excused herself by saying that she had not been able to begin because of the distress she was in at leaving her home and her mother. The excuse contented the queen, who said, however, as she went away, "Tomorrow you must begin to work." When the girl found herself alone again, she could not tell how to help herself or what to do, and in her perplexity she went and gazed out of the window. There she saw 3 women passing by, and the first of them had a broad, flat foot, the second had a big underlip that hung down over her chin, and the third had a remarkably broad thumb. They all of them stopped in front of the window and called out to know what it was that the girl wanted. She told them all her need, and they promised her their help, and said, "Then you will invite us to your wedding, will not be ashamed of us, and call us your cousins, and let us sit at your table. If you will promise this, we will finish off your flax spinning in a very short time." "With all my heart," answered the girl. "Only come in now and begin at once." Then these same women came in, and she cleared a space in the first room for them to sit and carry on their spinning. The first one drew up the thread and moved the treadle that turned the wheel. The second moistened the thread. The third twisted it and rapped with her finger on the table, and as often as she rapped, a heap of yarn fell to the ground, and it was most beautifully spun. But the girl hid the 3 spinsters out of the queen's But the girl hid the 3 spinsters out of the queen's sight, and only showed her, as often as she came, the heaps of well-spun yarn, and there was no end to the praises she received. When the first room was empty, they went on to the second, and then the third, so at last it was all finished. Then the 3 women took their leave, saying to the girl, "Do not forget what you have promised, and it will be all the better for you." So when the girl took the queen and showed her the empty rooms and the great heaps of yarn, the wedding was at once arranged, and the bridegroom rejoiced that he should have so clever and diligent a wife, and praised her exceedingly. "I have 3 cousins," said the girl, "and as they have shown me a great deal of kindness, I would not wish to forget them in my good fortune. May I be allowed to invite them to the wedding and to ask them to sit at the table with us?" The queen and the bridegroom said at once, "There is no reason against it." So when the feast began, in came the 3 spinsters in strange guise, and the bride said, "Dear cousins, you are welcome." "Oh," said the bridegroom, "how come you have such dreadfully ugly relations?" And then he went up to the first spinster and said, "How is it you have such a broad, flat foot?" "With treading," answered she, "with treading." Then he went up to the second and said, How is it that you have such a great hanging lip?" "With licking," answered she, "with licking." Then he asked the third, "How is it that you have such a broad thumb?" With twisting thread," answered she, "with twisting thread." Then the bridegroom said that from that time forward his beautiful bride should never touch a spinning wheel, and so she escaped that tiresome flax spinning. Yeah. So that is all for today. Next is Hansel and Gretel. Next is Hansel and Gretel. We will do that tomorrow. Thank you so much for reading with me. I have a YouTube channel. I know this one may have seemed a little bit lackluster. I'm tired. It was a long weekend. But I will upload this one on YouTube. And that is all for today. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you so much for reading with me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.